question. Thank you for staying with me. If you need to get a drink or have a nibble of anything, please do, because it sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a long one here. So my next question is, why do you think there are so few Black male occupational therapists? And sort of coming off that is, what one practical action could be taken by organizations or professional bodies to start changing this? So it's a kind of a two-parter. And I think I'll go to you first, Andre, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you. It was actually quite nice listening to everyone's different areas, actually. Koiki, your role sounds quite interesting, actually. So, firstly, I would say there's probably so few because just in general, the profession is little known. Probably most of us before going into it had never heard of it going through school. Probably never met an occupational therapist prior to becoming one. So it's not a well-known profession in essence anyway. In relation to the organization and how they promote the profession, I wouldn't say that they actively promote the profession directly to minorities at all. So you won't see it in any of the prints, which we may look at. You never see any advertisement of going into occupational therapy on, say, Grime Daily or something like that. So young people would have never heard of it. They would have no reason to have heard of it. And then therefore you almost stumble across it. And in essence, you have to be lucky to do that. You have to, it's just, a byproduct, as opposed to other professions where they're more prevalent, they're more well-known, they're more advertised. Even in terms of people's families, there's certain professions families will generally push their children into. I'm sure people have been told to be, I don't know, a doctor or nurse or whatever it may be. But it's not often someone would say you must become an occupational therapist. But again, I think that goes back to the profile of the role. And what's interesting is actually when you go into the profession and you realize the significance and the importance of the role in all of these organizations, it's quite strange that it's not a more well-known profession, actually. Because it's almost, in every role I've ever been in, it's like literally critical. In the hospital is critical, in social services is critical, in private sector it's always critical. So it is interesting, but I think the kind of the governing body have something to do with that. I think they need to be a bit more inventive in the way that they promote the profession. And that comes with, I think, maybe a bit of mix in terms of their strategic leads, so they can think a bit outside of the box in terms of how they promote the profession and get a wider range of people coming in. Otherwise, it will always be like that, really, because I think the people who are occupational therapists are generally middle-aged white women, and they will probably tell their daughters to become occupational therapists, and then so it goes. So I think that's my opinion on why, really.
Andre, I think you need to go and work for the RCOT. You know they're looking for a new CEO. You're that kind of level.
100%.
He's probably earning that already. He doesn't need to. Being a 9, he's probably earning that money already. He's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, literally, I had a list of things I wanted to say about this question, but Andre's literally like tick, 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 tick.
But you know what's interesting though? What Andre was talking about, like when he mentioned about this, just being inventive and strategic in the way we get more Black males into the profession. Talking about, I'm sure Andre is on the register as an occupational therapist. as a black male occupational therapist who is in the senior position. I'm not sure if someone's reached out to you to get your experience and how you manage to find your way to that role, and how you can then inspire.
Never.
Yeah. So this is about being inventive and finding out who is an occupational therapist around the country. What are they doing?
The next BAME OT UK podcast.
Yeah.
Interview with Andre.
But yeah, no, the being inventive requires, it's hard work. It's not easy. Basically.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Kwaku, that question over to you. Why do you think there are so few black male occupational therapists? And what one practical action could be taken by organisations or the professional body to start changing this?
I don't particularly think occupational therapy is portrayed as a cool thing to do amongst anyone. I don't think amongst anyone. I don't think it's like a glamorous profession that you think, right, I'm gonna go and do an OT. I'm gonna be an OT because I get to do these cool things. Because again, I don't think it's pushed that well by people, by even maybe even us to some extent, because there are so many good things that you can do. You don't have to do when you go to university, you get taught a certain way, the process, and that process works, but you don't have to stick to that process. You can use occupational therapy in all different settings. You can use it could be, as long as you've got that qualification and understanding of the importance of occupation, you could literally work in anywhere. So I think that's what maybe that aspect of it doesn't appeal to people, because they just might see it as a hospital-based profession, working, wearing that uniform, going to work with majority, probably in the care profession, majority are probably females, historically. So that's how it's viewed. So I don't think it's a cool profession enough that attracts maybe your average black male to want to go into that profession, because what we've grown up and seen is that there isn't many of those people, people that look like us in that type of role. We see people that might be in like really far away, as in professional footballers or something like that, or music or doctors. Everything is you go from here all the way to the top. There's no middle ground. You can't just be normal. You have to be above, or you just stay where you are, and that's really sad. So I don't think it's that cool. But saying that, I can see a lot of cool guys here today, so maybe the profession is changing in a way, and actually it may be up to us to then encourage other people who have that kind of talent, have those kind of skills, that could follow in our footsteps and become occupational therapists, not just in maybe your standard hospital setting. Which I'm not I'm not saying the hospital working is not good. It's really it's good and it's really relevant. But actually, there is other places that you can work in occupational therapy and use your skills that will actually benefit, society. I always I hope that I can get more black males to come and work in the prison setting as much as possible, because the society's created this thing that that we incarcerate. We put a high proportion of black males in prison. But actually the people that are working with the black males don't look like them. So it's going to be difficult for those people to trust you to help me to change. So my idea is, if I can encourage another black male to come and work in the prison setting, regardless of where it is, that's a positive thing, because, when you see someone that looks like you, even in schools, when you see someone that looks like you, you're more likely, not that you're going to get on with them straight away. That's not always the case either. But you're more likely to want to engage than not.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Because even like Kwaku was saying about building a therapeutic relationship and rapport. If someone sees you of the same kind of ethnicity and background, they can kind of see that you might have the same hobbies or relations. So it allows them to kind of open up more. And as an OT working in that setting, if you want to try and gather as much information as possible to try and help kind of find an intervention, then it's a lot easier. if you already got a patient that's willing to kind of share and open up some of their worries and some of their concerns.
If you think about it, actually, if you think about some of the issues, some of the big issues that are happening in different places, amongst Black and other minority ethnic groups, I would hope that if an OT was to get a qualification and work in mainstream schools, it doesn't have to be in a clinic or in a hospital setting or in a forensic mental health setting. But if you can have representation, but actually with skills and a profession, forward-facing profession in the mainstream schools or in local communities, that might encourage people to want to come to profession as well, because a lot of the time you see like maybe mentors, someone's a mentor, but actually that's good, that's fantastic, but can someone then give them an opportunity to go and study the impact of occupation on what the people in the community are doing? So encouraging people you're a mentor, you're very good at what you're doing, but can you add this onto what you're doing to make sure you've got a wider scope and wider understanding of the impact of what you're doing is having on you as a person?
Wow. Yes, it's really interesting. I've been on several webinars at the moment because I'm just into the activism side of occupational therapy at the moment, and there's wonderful man called Professor Gus John, and he's a Black professor, a visiting professor at Coventry University. He's so learned, and he was the first Black education director of education for Hackney in the 70s, and he just said that you need the reason that when they went into Hackney and his collective education campaigners came in and sorted out the schools in Hackney because it was failing all the people from the global majority populations, and it needed Black folk to help sort out Black folk, because there was understanding, there was history, there was connection, and it changed the outcomes for the kids in schools, let alone university. It was starting at the schools. So I really do relate to when Craigie was saying you need to get more Black occupational therapists into prison, into that social justice side, because they see you and there's role modeling, but there's connection and history that a white person cannot have. As much as they're a good person, they don't have that side of things, that can't make that connection on a deeper level. So yeah, I really got that, really relate to that. Where am I now? Chike, because you started speaking, you might as well answer this question as well.
Well, most of Quaker and Andre more or less touched a lot of the things that I was gonna bring up as well. And I do see OT as a very white female dominated profession. And I think maybe because some of its kind of core skills and core values are very kind of nurturing and very caring, and kind of society don't see that as kind of a male, that side of things as well. So it doesn't kind of attract kind of the typical male in going into that profession as well. I also think from what I've done my research and kind of seeing OT in other countries, there's a lot of third world countries that don't have an occupational therapist or don't have OT. So kind of looking at OT as a profession in a kind of worldwide perspective, again, like Andre was saying as well, a lot of kind of males coming into the country, they won't be aware of an OT, and it's something that's kind of, it kind of gets brushed under, especially during the COVID period as well. When you do hear a lot of success stories from, you just hear kind of the physios, the doctors, the nurses, and you don't always hear, and the work of the OT during kind of the crucial role of working in a hospital setting. And I also feel the funding, I think, because when I was doing my studying as well, the NHS were able to fund my course, but they've since stopped that. And kind of when you look at kind of Black males, a lot of them are from a deprived background, and it's more difficult when you kind of look at their background. Some of them have done things in the past because they haven't been able to kind of access other things that other cultures can get access to. And sometimes when you kind of look at the CRB or kind of trying to get into kind of that role, sometimes there's that occupational deprivation that we talk of that can limit, again, kind of targeting Black males into the healthcare profession. And again, the funding as well. I think getting rid of the NHS funding is kind of made it even more difficult to kind of recruit Black males into the profession. And I think that's more or less. I think if to kind of promote, I think promotion is really important, and especially like now utilizing Black History Month, kind of having this kind of show of Black male OTs will hopefully encourage other Black male OTs and kind of make them aware that, oh, okay, so they are OTs in this profession. Maybe that's something that I can kind of venue into. So I think just promotion is very important about an occupational therapist, and as a Black male occupational therapist, some of the benefits it can have towards a patient. And I think even from my kind of experience, again, working in the community, when I work with kind of frail, elderly patients, they feel, I think because of kind of my physique and being a male, sometimes they feel more comfortable and more confident practicing transfers or practicing mobility, because a lot of them had falls or are not as confident or pretty anxious following that fall. So when they see kind of a strong, confident male trying to assist them, it kind of helps that as well, that aspect of things.
Yeah, it's just that your identity, your maleness creates this therapeutic connection for recovery. That's quite a nice way of thinking about why you should come into the profession. But the other thing that really interested me was about funding. And I have this, well, I'm an educator, occupational therapy educator, and I have this complete conflict in tension, because I know standardized process creates inequality and inequity as well. So you've got this now you have to have your loans and stuff, and there's, the loan system kind of scares some people in the poorest socioeconomic class, so they don't come in. And we know that there are white male youth in the poorer socioeconomic class, and we know there are Black male youths in the poorer socioeconomic class. And if we want to get them into the profession, we've got to unstandardize how we support them into the profession. And this whole, the standardization of education is the way towards creating more inequality. It's about race and class intersectioning with this, and the government are just not interested in discussing that. It scares them too much. But you're right, that funding element was so important. We saw the greatest number of diversity of gender and race when we had the funding.
Yeah, and even when you look now at the COVID outbreak, and a lot of kind of, sadly, the healthcare professions that are passing away from it, a lot of them are Black doctors, Black nurses, and it's because they were able to access that NHS funding to kind of get into that profession. And that's why there is kind of a high ratio of BAME people within the healthcare professions, because a lot of them have, or during the NHS funding, a lot of them did come from, very deprived socioeconomical backgrounds. And now, if they were to try and go into healthcare, they know that they'll have to apply for a loan and etc. going from there.
Yeah, there was all those schemes to get people in and help them into the profession previously, but now they're all kind of disappeared now. Thank you for that. Oh, you got me off on an activism conversation then. Sorry about that, guys. Valentine, over to you.
Right. So to go back to the question. So why do I think there are few Black male OTs?
And what do you think on a practical level, organizations?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat obviously what's been mentioned by most of the guys, but if I offer what I think, what I found out is, I think the history of how OT started has got a big part in everything. How it started off World War II, just after World War II, and all the men were out fighting, and the women stayed, and the over in the hospitals helping out, and doing the manual labor work and stuff like that. And I can see how the people who started it, maybe the people who want to keep it the way it started, that kind of a thing. I could, from my personal experience, having been in OT and studied into it, there were opportunities I had to leave. And I had opportunity. Yeah, there were moments where I was really off from getting into the profession. Can you hear me?
We keep losing you.
Can you hear me? Am I there?
Yes, you're there.
Oh no. Yeah. So when I got into OT, I was often labeled a token boy, and it was one of those things where they kind of took away any credibility that any education that I've done, it's basically not, it doesn't count for anything. You're only here because of your skin color and stuff like that, and so I was kind of stuck with the identity crisis, as well as also that thing where I just felt like unworthy to be in to be into this profession, just purely basically on how I was treated. And it was quite sickening, but I can't imagine an experience I went through. So am I still there? Am I breaking up a bit? I may have to move.
Keep going, we're hearing you.
Yeah, so I think image and reputation definitely play a big part. And with it being a white female, dominated profession, I remember talking to my friends, telling them that I wanted to become an occupational therapist, and sometimes I would encourage them to do it as well. And they weren't interested. They weren't really willing to get into it. And part of that is the reputation that it had. And me going into it, I didn't expect to be treated the way that I was treated, and but in a way, I had to be really resilient to qualify. And I'm grateful that I've done so, because now I can tell people who look like me, people who may be even different from me, that it doesn't matter what you look like. It's all about who you are as a person, and if you love OT, and you love helping out people, occupational balance, and helping out people who've been through a really terrible time, it's something that you can definitely get into. So I can only say that if the people in power look at things a bit differently, and I agree with Kwaku, what you mentioned about approaching people who are high up those bands, and really reach out to them and discuss strategies to help out and to promote. That would change a lot of hopefully the demographic of people that come in. But my experience, if anything, would deter Black men more than anything else. So sorry, mine's a bit negative, but yeah.
No, that's an interesting slant on it, in that you got qualified. Is that what you said? You got qualified, or you were qualifying, and you were being told that you were here only because of your skin color?
As a student, yeah.
Well,
it wasn't said in that way, but it was implied, basically.
Yeah. Thing is that's not an uncommon story, and it is a story of people using language to disempower you, to make you feel that you don't belong somewhere, or that it's special. We let you into this profession, and that is the language of disempowerment, and we have to stop that nonsense. Everybody belongs because you're in the human race, and there's a job any human can go for it if they've got the right qualifications. What's all that nonsense about? That, you know, I know you're special, Valentine. I'm not saying you're not special, but, you know, you're allowed in a profession that you got through the doors through your qualification to get into to study, you know, and this is the microaggressive language that we have to face every day. You know, oh, you're so special. It's so nice you're here. Could you just, you know, tell us about your food? What's the food got to do with what I'm doing? It's my job. I'm doing my job. Leave me alone. Go away.
I mean, at the time, I think my story getting into OT is it's quite unique, put it that way, because at the time, I remember my first week being at uni. I was involved with the police, and funny enough, you know, I had committed an offence, and when, you know, Quaker talks about some of the kids, some of the young guys that have been through the experiences, you know, with the law, on the wrong side of it anyway, you know, I can't think that they could have, you know, possibly have a dream that they can get into a profession such as OT, and to persevere through that, you know, having an employer look at, you know, some of the offences that you've committed, and to see beyond that, to see that, okay, this person's got a character that speaks louder than what's written by, you know, by some police officer. So if anything, yeah, I mean, promotion, if a person, you know, in a similar situation to me, you know, saw me, and they saw that, you know, I'm an occupational therapist, you know, I think that would speak volumes. That would be quite powerful to know that, okay, even though my circumstances aren't great, I can get somewhere with, you know, with anything I want to, you know, achieve.
Thank you for that story. Sorry, I went on a rant there. I just get so irritated sometimes. Irritated. Oliver, over to you.
All right, so this is a bit of a mad one for me, but I'm going to do the best that I can without trying to go over too much of the points that have already been brought up. So I can only talk about my own personal experiences, and I think that's a good place to start when it comes to this question. But I grew up in South London, area called Deptford, and growing up as a young man, gangs, violence, that's all I knew. Yeah, so stepping out of my house, those are the things that, by default, as a black boy, these are the things that I had to face on a day-to-day basis. Now, for me, and the people that were in and around me, not necessarily my parents, but the people that were in and around me, it was always a case of, how do we get out of what is described as the hood? Yeah, so how do you get out of this way of life? Yeah, and so the ideas that always come to your mind would be things like, as Quaker was saying earlier, football, music, anything like that, where you feel like you can change your life and go from one thing to another. Yeah, so anything in between that, it kind of feels like you're not really achieving much. Yeah, and so I would, like, so as a young person growing up, I think OT would kind of fall into that bracket. You tell a young boy that's going through certain things, that wants to change his life and really accomplish and be something and be able to take care of his family and look after people. Unfortunately, as an OT, you can't necessarily do that. But that being said, I do think there is like a lack of promotion, as what's been discussed previously, which isn't good. I remember, you know, going through school, you know exactly what a physiotherapist is. And I think that was the one thing that was in my mind. Oh, that might be something I coing is being a physiotherapist. But the other thing that I think as well is, this might be a bit controversial, but it's like, well, we all know that OT is sort of more of a middle class white person, like white people. That's, you know, mainly that's who we've got. So my thing is this: is that as a black man, I've had to learn to adapt the way I speak, adapt the way I behave, adapt the way that I communicate with people, adapt to the jokes that people say in the office. All of these things, because if for me to come as I am, in terms of where I've come from, and be the person that I truly am, it wouldn't be accepted. So a lot of the time I'm having to learn different ways and different strategies for other people to be comfortable with me being in the vicinity. Now, whilst that's good, because I can see across here we've got lots of for other black men that have obviously gone through this process. I think there's, for a lot of other black guys, that process is very difficult, because, you know, people just want to naturally be themselves. And I think when you think about it deeply, like I was speaking to a friend about this the other day, I think you look at like the building industry. Yeah, you might have, it's mainly sort of like, you'd have a lot of like white lads, yeah, what's happening, and they can talk how they want, they can be how they want, and they can grow, and they can progress through their careers the same way they can do if they're a plumber, the same way they can do if they're an electrician. But as a black man, in order to progress through any of these sort of industries, you have to learn to adapt. And for a lot of us, we find that difficult. So, you know, for me, I think it's a difficult one, but it's about, first and foremost, it's about bringing OT and putting it in front of people's faces. And I think it's the way in which you do that. And for me, like, you know, I see, like, I'm not really out here. Like, I look at Quaker and I know he's doing a lot out here. Do you get what I mean? Because I see him on the socials and I think, that's mad. Like, he's really like putting himself out there. And I think, to be honest, I think maybe that's something that I need to do and other black OTs need to do, to let people know that actually you can actually achieve a decent life, yeah, and you can make a difference in a profession like OT. And the more we put ourselves in that position, the more people will be more receptive to it, because it's really difficult for a middle class white lady. Yeah, you know, you should get into OT, and for me, I'm just like, like, it's not connecting. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not connecting. But when it comes from someone who has been through the rough, who's been through the tumble, who understands my journey, all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe we can, this might be something that can be done. Because I never forget, like, even through being a student, I've done placements, and there's been many occasions where, you know, first day, oh, you're Oliver. Yeah, they weren't expecting Oliver to look like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Oliver was, in their mind, looked slightly different. Do you get what I'm saying? But that's fine. And I continue to adapt, and I laugh at their jokes. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes they're as OTs, they're talking, having banter about things that I don't even understand. But yeah. And I'm pretending that I understand and I know what they're talking about, but I don't. Do you get what I'm saying? And this is a process that I've had to go through. And it's almost like a skill that you learn to develop over time in order to integrate yourself, and be able to interact and move through the process as well. So in terms of getting more black OTs, or, you know, getting more black men OTs, I definitely think that it starts with forums like this. And I think, you know, I look at, because I even the other day I was sitting down and thinking, like, if in terms of my field, I've kind of hitting the ceiling again, where I'm sitting to myself and saying, well, what's next? And all of a sudden now, Andre's just walked into the building. Now I'm seeing a little bit a different type of light. Do you get what I'm saying? And seeing that, oh, okay, there could be scope for other things. Do you see what I'm saying? But in my mind, I thought, oh, OT, do I need to start thinking about other, because, you know, I like to consider myself as an ambitious person. I want to achieve things. Do you see what I'm saying? But yeah, man, I think it's quite a complex discussion, this one. But I think I've tried to cover this area as much as I possibly can. So yeah.
Can I just touch on what Oliver said? Because what Oliver said is amazing. It's probably the most interesting dynamic. And it's so interesting that you experience it as well. So through my journey, similar to you, I grew up on ends. I've been stabbed. To show you my stab wounds. When I was 17, I was stabbed. When I was young, I was getting in having rubs with the law. My life could have gone any way, literally. I could have been in jail in one of Kwaku's
getting some one-to-one.
How life was at that time when you're 16, 17 and you live.
Yeah.
And the experience I've had on my way to get into where I am now is mastering exactly what Oliver has said.
100%.
It's the skill in itself. So
yeah,
no matter where I get, you never 100% feel your absolute self, because you have to always present yourself in a specific way. One of the things which I think a lot of the teams I've managed have really probably appreciated from me, and really kind of has helped them bond with me, is that I treat them exactly how I would want to be treated. I'm not one middle class women. I don't know how to micromanage people in that way. Yeah. I don't know how to speak to people with microaggressions at all. So I treat people in a very human-like way. But similar to what Oliver said, there's not a lot of people in the circles I have in my who would be probably not as resilient, but have the patience to go some of the hurdles that you have to go as a black man. And at my level now, I'm the only black person. there's no black people at all at the tables I'm sitting at now. So you do find yourself in discussion with. Obviously, I'm still quite young because I'm only 34. So
hey, no, don't gas me, bro. Hey, babes, I'm coming. Don't worry, we're changing. I'm changing this up, man. I got to.
Fine.
I'm letting my kids know from now something's about to change.
The people you're surrounded by are probably 20 years older than you. They're from a whole different world from you, and you have that skill and that kind of capability to be a chameleon and be able to see people from completely different dimensions to you who would never ever probably come across you in their normal day-to-day life. They haven't got a black friend. They haven't got a black friend like Andre.
No.
But I speak to them as if I've known them my whole life, and that's not a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people, but there's a lot of people don't have the opportunity to get, and to get it, you have to be quite resilient. And there's so many times, similar to what Oliver said, through my whole career in OT, where people have said, "You don't look like an OT."
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
not even. You don't look like an OT.
No, yeah.
You don't look like an. What does an OT look like?
And you know what's so mad about that? I even think like sometimes, I step into my buildings. I work in like a quite a big building, like 6 or 7 floors, and like I might clock in with my badge and then pull my jacket up. Do you know how many times people want to stop me? Excuse me, like I'm not security, I'm talking about just normal people. They want to inquire, can I see your badge? Are you a part? Like, and I'm thinking, wait, hold on. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, if I was like a 28-year-old white lady with blonde hair, you wouldn't be doing this to me. Do you get what I'm saying? And I think like there's a lot of overt stuff that happens as well. And you have to, if you're not thick-skinned, you can't do it. I've had like managers that have been tried to almost like low-key bully me, in a way where like in the sort of the manner in which they communicate with you. So it's like they make you know I'm where I am and you're where you are. And it's like they use specific type of language, and you've got to really, like, for me, a lot of the time I'm a quiet person in work, so I just keep myself to myself. I don't really get too involved with certain things. Oh, Oliver's really calm. He's really, and I have to be like that, because if I was any other way, like some of our managers or some of the other staff, when they're raising their voice and they're shouting in the office, and if I do it, it sounds and looks completely different. Do you get what I'm saying? Oh my gosh, did you see Oliver? Oh my God, I was so scared. Like, but when they do it, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Oh, they're just getting a few things off their chest. So there's a lot of things I think, and this is why I think it's really difficult it will be difficult for a lot of black guys to get into this profession, because of the hurdles in which you have to overcome in order to get here, as well as the academic side. We even spoke about that. Do you get what I'm saying? So we look at, every time I see a black man as an OT, I've got nothing but respect, because I know the process that you've been through. Do you get what I'm saying? And I know what it takes to be here, but more importantly, I know what it takes to also to move up the levels. I'm not where Andre is yet, but yeah, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. But yeah, no, man, this is good, man. This is good.
No, that's amazing, guys. Honestly, that's fantastic. What you guys have been saying is exactly like all your experiences, because it's one of those things that, again, if you haven't experienced it, how do you then know that you're going to overcome it, or it's not something so serious to the person, you know? But it's very interesting. You guys talk about you've had to adapt yourself and things like that, because I think perhaps where I've worked in terms of my sports technician role, it was in London. You know, the staff team was very, very diverse. So there was a lot of times I just felt comfortable because I saw like the nurses, let's say, or the healthcare assistants, that's like my uncles, or, you know, it could be my mum that's the nurse. So there isn't a lot of changes. Like there's Ghanaian, there's Nigerians, there's South African, there's a mix of people working there, as well as other ethnicities as well. So, and then through placement, I suppose, there's only probably one placement that I found that was a little bit, I wasn't sure. That's probably what put me off wanting to work in hospitals after my first placement. As much as I enjoyed it, I just didn't feel like it was the vibe for a black male to be there. There wasn't many males in general, so for a black male to be in there, you're completely like fish out of water type of thing, yeah. But I think where I'm working now, because of the young men and the energy that they bring to the service, that the people that work in the service have to be so adaptable to the to the style of the young men that actually I don't feel like I have to learn new skills in the way I manage situations in amongst my colleagues. But I think it's purely because of the setting I work in. Because if I worked in a different setting, I think I'd probably feel exactly the same way as Andre and Oliver there, because it's just that's how it is. Because I'm amongst young men, that kind of street culture where they all speak in a certain way, they all behave in a certain way, they can raise their voice, they very much, you know, they're just lively, they're lively characters. Yeah. So you have to be able to respond to them in a way that actually meets them at their level, and then gradually use my skills to say, listen, we're about to talk about something quite serious, so let's bring ourselves back into the room and have that serious conversation. You know, and then that takes skill as well. But you know, honestly, you guys having to like do that's hard work on top of actually the occupational therapy work that you have to do on a day-to-day basis, you know.
100%. Yeah, I agree with all of you as well, because it's like you're speaking a different language as well. Because how I talk to my boys is completely different to how I'll talk to a 90-year-old patient, or how I'll talk to my colleagues who are mostly white, female dominated. So you kind of you find yourself always adapting and kind of changing your communication skills, changing your jargon, changing your language, changing your terminology, just so that you can kind of filter and kind of make it more appropriate for the person or the client that you're trying to engage in. And like you guys are saying as well, I think because we're black males already, if you don't know us, we're already intimidating. So when we do try to be kind of make our point or put our point across, they'll see us as the angry black male, or even the angry black woman as well, is a term that you hear a lot. But if it was like a white male, they'll be, he was just being assertive, or he was just, you know, trying to make a valid point. So it is difficult how to kind of change those views. And I think with time, hopefully, and with more OTs coming into the profession, black male OTs coming to the profession, it can kind of help build that relationship. And kind of, I think as well, is trying to get people that haven't been around black people a lot get used to us. So the more black people that are around, they won't kind of have some stereotypical views or kind of prejudiced views towards us, and kind of get used to how they engage or how they can kind of open up to us as well.
Yeah. But just to make one more point, and then we'll probably talk all night. But opportunities I've had, which I'm really grateful for, is to kind of have almost like an oversee of teams and the dynamics of what occurs in them. And what I have been able to see, because often what people will say is that people are pulling the race card, or are perceiving a lot of these things. I can tell you firsthand the amount of grievances that have come through to me on the basis of aggressive Black women, of people being accused of being aggressive, and 99% of them are Black women, and they all. And I've seen this throughout. 99% of the time, the person being accused of being aggressive or rude is a Black woman. And my experience of working in various organizations is that the most aggressive and almost inappropriate people are not Black women. I won't say it is. So it is a lot to do with people's just inherent biases, unconscious biases of how they perceive people are talking. If someone's passionate or making a point, people's biases will come into play, and they will make these accusations. And one of the most important things is that I'm there in an organisation to make those calls about what should happen next. Because what often would have happened if I wasn't there is those people would have been maybe disciplined, or it would have been taken to another level. When I know the individual and I'm able to read in between the lines of what actually did occur, it is an interesting thing to observe, and it makes me wonder how many people are falsely accused of things when they work. But yeah, it's just what is add that.
Wow, that was such a powerful conversation, and so endemically true across all of public sector, that you have to, I mean, I don't know if any of you listen to Radio 4, probably you're too young to listen to Radio 4, but everything you're talking about is a subject called code switching, how we change ourselves, how we mold ourselves, how we manipulate the way we do things so that we can just fit in and get on with the job. And there's this term called code switching. And there was this wonderful episode on Radio 4 about code switching. So it's on iPlayer if you want to listen. It was incredible. The other thing is that, I mean, it is over represented in the literature, that what you're talking about, Andre, about people being put through grievance, through discipline, through getting fired due to disciplines or tribunals, etc. It's overrepresented by the people from the global majority, whether you be Black or Asian. And it's about colorism as well. The darker your skin, the less likely you are to get up that ladder. The lighter your skin, you will seem to find success a bit more easier than others. There's so many layers of complexity, but it's well known. But the change is slow, the progress is slow. That's the frustrating part of it. You know, we've got Andre, we're all like, wow, he's 9. That's rare. You know, well, why has it got to be rare? Why has it got to be a special thing? You know, and this whole thing about, you know, the microaggression, and we're calling it unconscious bias. It is not unconscious bias. It is learned conscious behavior, and you're going towards it to make a decision about someone, to make an assumption about someone. You know, unconscious bias gives you a get out clause. Like, I didn't know about it, and now I know about it. You always knew about it. You knew about your privilege. When you were born, you were told that you had rights and you will be successful because you are a white person. And every day that black, brown child comes into the world, straight from the get-go, they are told that they are different and they're going to have a struggle getting through life. Why are they told that? You're setting them up already from a child that they're going to have trouble getting on. And that narrative, that societal conditioning, that has to be disrupted and dismantled. It can't keep carrying on because, hey, whether you're brown or white, you're still human and you're still part of society. You can still get a job. You can still, have a family. You can still make love. You can get through and do bad things, good things. Everybody does that. Why particularly zone in on a particular ethnicity, and that's historical. We know it's historical. Race, class, and empire. We have to break that. And we can't break that if we don't start it at the schools and we don't get leaders right at the top. Andre, big thing there. Right at the top to disrupt it and dismantle it. You can't be doing it on your own, Andre. It needs to be a collective.
You're absolutely right. The main issues in relation to a lot of what people experience is that the people who are making the strategic agendas, and the people who are making the strategic decisions for how resources allocated, what the priorities of the organization are not representative of the people who either access the service or the people within the organization. So what you'll find is you'll have a board of directors who are pulling the strings of a large organization with a demographic of much diversity, and they are making uninformed decisions because they have no insight into the experiences of the people who are in the organization and or who are using the services. So representation is critical at decision-making level, because otherwise all the decisions that will be made will not have you considered and will not have you even made relevant in what is designed. So you'll have services, you'll have internal policies, which are not considering you. So, for example, in the organization I work in, I was able to implement a BAME networking forum across the organization. So not just in adult social care, across the organization, but I had to drive that. I had to put that together. That forum now feeds into the board about anything to do with equality, anything to do with decision making, communications across the organization, where we talk about ethnicity, race, service provision, etc., etc., etc. But if I wasn't there, it would not have occurred. You see, it wouldn't have been a discussion, and it's very powerful that people who look like us are able to influence the strategic agenda of organization, and it's too little. I firsthand see it. The people who you'll have OTs, but the stuff that's happening above that, people often are not aware of how these decisions come about. The people who make these decisions, how the money is allotted, why your team is structured in the way it is to meet the demands of the people in the area of whichever you guys cover. These decisions are made by a very small group of people who do not look like you.
Just to add to that as well, Andre, because I think sometimes as well, from my perspective as an OT, I think that word representation, I think is quite key, because I think, you go into any like mental health industry, if you go into any London borough, and you walk in the offices and you walk in the establishments, and you will see black people. Yeah, you will see black people, but or black men, should I say? But the key thing is, are they in the positions to make change? Are they in the positions to influence big decisions? And so as an OT, I work on my floor. I've got directors that work on my floor, and they walk past me every day. Don't say hello to me. They walk past me every day. And I look at them and I think to myself, well, I know you don't live in this area. Do you know what I mean? You probably travel like 2-3 hours, or you stay in a hotel and then go back for the weekend. And how is it you are able to tell me, or how is it you're able to make a decision about how these people in a deprived area, yes, and when I say deprived, I mean really deprived, how are you able to make informed decisions about their needs? And that for me is difficult. But as an OT, obviously at this present moment in time, I work within the scope that my job role is. Do you see what I'm saying? And I do the best job that I can. But when it comes to that representation, it's like boxes are being ticked because, you know, what do you mean? Look, 30-40% of our, you know, we've got like, yes. But when you start asking them about people who are in those influential positions, the percentage is very, very different. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think, you know, when I see what you're doing and you know where you are at this moment in time, that gives me hope. Not even to say that I want to be there, because to be honest with you, that doesn't really bother me. To be honest, the thing is that I want what's best for the people. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think sometimes as OTs, we're being driven by people who don't necessarily understand the true needs of the wider context of the people that we're working for. So. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. God, that was so good. I really enjoyed that conversation, and I know I'm not a black male occupational therapist, but I do relate to that. But I have a word of caution as well, and I say this quite a lot. Not all your skin folk are your kin folk, as we can see when we look across to the Conservative Party. It is the most diverse political party in a long time, but they are not working
Mish,
for us.
I think that's a whole different podcast episode to talk
Hey,
about.
that's
To talk about what happens when people, because I suppose, again, if you really want to talk about like what happens when people get to positions of power, it's when you haven't experienced in a position of power for a long time in your life, you know, you're the line in your family, no one's had that position of power, you just want to use it to the to your benefit, you know. It becomes like a very selfish act, unless you've experienced something that you know that then actually I want to help my community, I want to help my brothers and sisters, I want to help everyone else come along, and perhaps, yeah, as you said, that's what might be happening in certain situations at present. But I think occupational therapy, I think everyone that comes into occupational therapy has this thing about them about wanting to help people. I don't particularly see that occupational therapists tend to be like selfish individuals. Yeah, all humans are selfish to some extent, but I think to be able to put yourself in a position where you're helping others and helping the community in terms of occupational therapy, because that's what we have to think about. It's all about the community. It's about making sure that wherever you are is good enough for everyone to live in, or for that particular person to live in. So when we think about that, I think I really truly believe that every occupational therapist wants the best for the community, and including that person. So actually, to see that we're here as black males, wanting to strive for some form of change. So if I can help 2 other black people, though that 2 other black people, that means they can help 4 other people, right? And then and it can go that way. And if they can see, people can see us as representing occupational therapy, you know, that means that actually occupational therapy can grow in a certain way, in a certain direction. And I mean this, I think that's positive anyway.
Well, one of the things which also allows us to do when there's more representation is to place people who may not have always got the opportunity into places of opportunity. So another one of the things which I'm like, like, really happy about is that I've been able to put other black people into position. I've been able to, not because of their skin color necessarily, but they may not have been given that opportunity unless I was there. And I've been able to put people into managerial positions that they may not have been able to get to because they would have been overlooked. And if there isn't enough of a mix of people who, when decisions are being made, to consider other people outside of the traditional, then things will never change. You'll always get the same people being chosen. You'll always get the same mix of people. If people are not willing to take risks and give people the opportunity. Now, opportunity is all people ask for. I could pick one of you guys now and say, Kwaku, all right, I'm going to bring you in, right? I want you to manage this team, right? If I gave you the tools, I gave you enough leeway to make mistakes, right? You'd be able to do it. You wouldn't have an issue. But someone would have to have that passion and that interest to make that call and say, you know what, I can pick A, but go with him, and I'm going to support him to become who he needs to become. And it's not often you're gonna get that. You're gonna get people who are literally looking at any opportunity not to pick you, or not reading in between the lines of what it will do for the organization to have another black manager.
I hear that. Like, I remember when me and Kwaku first met the first time, and he was doing his OT and Chill podcast. I just qualified and I applied for quite a few jobs and had quite a few interviews as well. And some interviews, I thought I did really well, exceptionally well. And when it came to even asking for feedback, they couldn't even give me any critical or maybe even constructive feedback. It was just one of those things where, as you say, Andre, like the opportunity, was just declined, even though I've obviously got the paper to prove that, I'm competent. But then it's that opportunity, was constantly denied. So this is in the Northeast, so the climate is a bit different up here. I'm not sure what it's like down south, but up north, things are quite, And
I'll tell you the reason why. Is because when you make a decision about placing someone into a team, it's often not just based on their technical capabilities. It's based on how the dynamic of the team will change if this person enters into this group. There's many times when I've made calls on people based on how this person may fit into this team and how it's going to impact the dynamic of the team. So if you're up in the Northeast, how are you going to fit into that team, Valentine?
Well, you see, this is the thing. Like, for me to get into OT, sorry, to cut you there. But you have to have those people skills. You have to be able to relate to, to 90-year-olds, to people who've walked in different shoes of life. And I've been able to do that, and I've demonstrated it through, not only just my other job ventures, but also in placement. So it's funny, when it actually came to getting the job that I'm into right now, I actually got through it by being working through an agency. So and for me, I'm a fairly newly qualified person, so I'm still laying the ropes of OT. But getting into my first role, I was more or less given a caseload before I could actually develop my those little baby steps. So I was kind of chucked into the deep end. But then the managers saw that I was, I did really well, to the point where they said, we want to keep you. But that opportunity was given. And it's like that for a lot of other people, and probably people like us, who are denied the opportunity, but they have the technical skills. But then, as you say rightly, Dre, it's all about representation, and also how it's going to, disrupt the dynamic of the team, which, totally crazy reason, but it is what it is.
Valentine, sorry to keep talking, but but it's interesting because one of the likely reasons you were able to navigate your way into it is because you were given the opportunity. Now, the opportunity came to you because needs must. Because when someone is recruiting and they bring in a locum, it's because there's an urgent need there and they can't permanently recruit. So you were able to display your capabilities when you may not have ever been able to display your capabilities if you went through the normal recruitment. So that's what I'm saying. It's all about opportunity.
And I know you mentioned about there's also that statistic as well. I think the people above, they need to kind of mark the numbers and say, okay, we've recruited this amount of, BAME people. So we've reached the standard, we've reached the numbers. And I think, again, when you mentioned about opportunity, because there's so fewer Black males kind of getting into that higher bracket of opportunity, they feel the added pressure to kind of maintain their role and their job. So they have to kind of abide and not really be able to give the opportunity to explore. Because like when you look at the HCPC and when you look at kind of all those stories of people getting sacked, you don't want to be the first Black male OT to be made a scapegoat and kind of mess up, and kind of that will kind of hinder or might not, help with getting other people in that, same position. So I think people that are promoted and are kind of brought into those roles, I think sometimes because there's that added bit of pressure, they may bite their tongue, or they may be reluctant to kind of explore and kind of help get other people into that same role as well.
I don't, sorry, I know Mish is probably waiting, like you guys, I didn't realize that men can talk for this long. But, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but when you go into certain meetings, I know we were talking about code switching earlier, yeah, but I know I said in my career I don't feel that, but in different situations I've been in, do you feel like when you enter a room, you're basically carrying the whole weight of every single Black person, every single Black person in England or UK on your back? Because as soon as, if you have to step out of place, like Chika was saying, it would be like people just sit back like, yep, we
told you so.
This is what's gonna happen, and that's really sad. But I have felt that pressure before, and I mean, because again, I think what Oliver was saying earlier about you got to be thick-skinned. Yeah, you've built yourself up. You can do the job. Like it's about having that self-esteem. You're trusting yourself. You understand what you need to do. You understand the work. So actually, it doesn't matter if someone's trying to put you down. But at the same time, what Andre was saying is it's really important that you have someone in your organization or your space somewhere that is willing to say, actually, you made a mistake here, but it's all right. This is how you might want to rectify it. It's okay. You stay where you are. Don't worry. Rather than your first strike is literally you're out, or you're an outcast from the rest of the team. But yeah, the opportunity is important. The pressure that you feel when you walk into a room as the only a Black person, not even just not just a male, the only Black person in the room is quite a lot to carry around every single day. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else felt that.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that as well. And I feel like even personally, I've had a bit of a inferiority complex. Even when I was at uni, I'm going to be completely honest, because even in my class at uni, there was a lot of, white middle class girls and boys. And a lot of the time you felt as though they were smarter than you, they knew more than you. And this is just me personally. Do you get what I'm saying? And I really had to push and to some degree it was good actually, because it made me push myself more. It made me sort of do a lot more digging, a lot more research and making sure I was on top of things. But you definitely feel this pressure, and you don't want to be the guy yeah, it's, you know what I mean? And you do you know what I mean? And you do feel like you've got the pressure. So, because every time I step into a new establishment, every time I step into a placement, I'm trying to convince this person that I'm one of the good ones. Do you understand? Because what you got to realize is that, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, a lot of the people that we will work with, the main contact they may have with Black people may be through the media, what they see on the telly, all of these things. So there's a lot of negativity that can be portrayed. Yeah. So now I'm walking into this place. I've got a fade today. So I see a couple men have got fades. All of these sort of things. You might have the beard, and you're stepping into this environment, and straight away there is that sense of intimidation. Now you've got to be able to quickly break that down and let them feel comfortable. Like, no, Oliver, no, he's all right, actually. He's good. Like, he's one of the good ones. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is the issues that we have to sometimes face in terms of like feeling as though you're carrying that load. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, my thing is this. I look at where my dad grew up as a caretaker. That's what he done. And his only aspiration for me was, Oliver, get a job. That's all he ever told me. He just wanted me to go have a job and not go to jail. Those were the only two things that he wanted me to do. Now, I've accomplished those things. Yeah, I've accomplished those things. But at the same time, now I want to set new targets for myself, because I believe that, you know, me and other black men can really influence change, and really start to maneuver things in the way that I feel like it needs to go. Do you know what I mean? And really understanding what are the needs of the people that we're working for. Because unfortunately, a lot of the time, people are being overlooked, or people's needs are being overlooked, because the reality is the people in certain positions just don't understand what they're going through. Do you get what I'm saying?
I would say, just to add to that, often when we talk about racism, inequalities, and lack of opportunity, people often refer to kind of overt racism and kind of that 1970s experience of racism. What people don't realize is the psychological impact it's had on Black people up to now. And one of the most impacting aspects of that is that kind of imposter syndrome that people experience, where, similar to what Oliver said, people feel as though they don't, they're not supposed to be where they are. That impacts their performance, their confidence, their self-esteem. And ultimately, for myself, as I said, every time I speak, anytime I present, anytime I'm anywhere, I always feel like I represent the Black race. It's madness. It's absolute madness. But every time I speak, anytime I do anything, I always feel as though I'm representing my race. And I think that is a load a lot of people do not carry in the normal day-to-day work environment. And it is not understood by your colleagues. And it never will be. And that is why we always say about representation, because much of what you will learn about equality is a lived experience. It's a lived experience. No matter what course you do, no matter what training you do, no matter how many friends of different races you have, you will not have that lived experience of being Black. So you will not be able to respond to certain scenarios or make certain decisions in an informed way. And therefore, it's always, as I always push it, good to have representation. So therefore, you have someone on the board or someone making that decision alongside you who has that quality, has that skill and that capability. So yeah.
Wow. I feel like, oh my God, I wish I was just listening and not in the podcast with you guys and just let you get on with it. So much information, and I think this is going to generate so much conversation. Even that thing you said, Andre, feeling like you have the weight of the Black nation on you when you go into spaces. This was said by a I can't remember his name now, Washington Post journalist, who said he was going for a job, a promotion job, and everyone kept saying, "Don't go for it, don't go for it. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. He won't give you the promotion." And he was like, "Why?" And he's saying, "Oh, because the guy had one in his 50-year career, this white male guy had one incident with another black journalist, and now he doesn't like to have anyone promoted to certain positions because of that. So I absolutely hear what you just said, Audrey, about that. And in a way, Oliver, you said that as well. You feel like, you know, you go in and you're representing all the time. How tiring is that to constantly be switched on about your character and everything you do every day? You know, I mean, as a person of color, I completely understand. I am within the lecture group the most criticized by students, the most criticized, and I put up with it. My outputs are incredibly good, but that doesn't matter. I will be constantly criticized by the student group.
And just to add to that as well, Mish, because I've sat in your classes before, and I've heard people saying things. Do you see what I'm saying? And I'm sitting there like, and it's only by about year 3, because remember, I'm going through the uni process. So to me, all lectures are kind of boring. Do you get what I'm saying? But I'm just trying to, like, I'm trying to get things in. But I'm thinking, like, why is it all the time these specific girls are always getting onto Mish? Like, oh gosh, Mish. I'm thinking, nah, something's not right. Do you get what I'm saying? And it got to a point where at some point I had to like chat to someone and say, like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. Why is it always like, do you know what I mean? Because there's people, there's other lectures that are mad dry, like dry. So I don't understand why you're getting on to Mish. But then sometimes, this is the thing, sometimes there's that screen, and it's like they can't even help it. Do you get what I'm saying? They can't help it. And it's really difficult, because a lot of the time, and this is the thing, when we talk about representation, it's not about just you even being there and being the face. It's about, are you going to stand for certain things? Do you know what I mean? Are you gonna tussle? Are you gonna go into combat when people say things that are inappropriate, or when people are blocking certain opportunities for people? Are you gonna do those things? Because if you're not, then you don't represent me. Do you see what I mean? And you don't represent a lot of the other black men or black women that work within these establishments. And I think that's something that I had to develop as well. Because remember, I've come from an environment where, like, what you talk like we outside. Do you get what I'm saying? That's what I was. Do you know what I'm saying? Now I've had to learn, sit back and think, okay, why are they behaving like this? And it's like almost as though that there was like a level of power, even though they're the students and Mish is the teacher. Do you get what I'm saying? And it's like, whereas I was sitting there thinking, she's teaching us. I don't understand. Why are you criticizing her when she's at that place? She's made it. She's there. We're trying to be there. That's why it didn't ever really make sense to me. But these are some of the things that I've had to learn along the way. Because a lot of the people that I met in my class at uni are not people that I would have met on a day-to-day basis. Because I just wouldn't have encountered them in any forum necessarily. So it was all learning for me. But I just think that it happens in so many different factors. It happens from people above you, it happens from people below you. And this is the challenge that we have, especially as black men. And, you know, we're here and we're navigating it well. And I just hope that we can create the right base for those who are yet to come. And hopefully they will benefit off some of the stuff that we've had to go through in order to be where we are today.
That's interesting, because it's almost as if you're operating on survival mode than you like thriving. I'm saying, like, even on when you're out on placement, it's almost, I think you mentioned, Oliver, like it's almost like you're wanting to prove them wrong rather than you to learn. You know what I'm saying? So those aspects of safety and security, they aren't there. So it's almost like you have to really, you know, prove yourself, prove to them. It's supposed to be like really thriving, and you know, you've got that security already, and you know, and that safety. So, you know, it's quite interesting that you mentioned that. Yeah.